Welcome to everyone that's joined so far. We're going to be starting in just a moment. My name is David Jost. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with Arreva. And if you have joined us, we're going to be starting at in just about 6 minutes here, which is 2 p.m. Eastern time. And you can do the translation for wherever you're at. But if you are seeing right now the screen for pushing beyond the donation envelope for sustainable faith-based fundraising success in today's world, you are in the right place. If you are seeing that and that's not where you intend to be, you may want to just stick around. This is going to be some great information for faith-based fundraisers, really for anyone in the nonprofit space altogether. So we're looking forward to a really great session. I would appreciate if you are on right now and you can hear me, if you would just let me know that you can hear me and that you can see the screen okay. We're going to be asking folks to just let us know where they're joining us from. If they're comfortable, let us know what kind of faith-based organization you're with. Anything you want to share, just kind of a good way to test out the chat box, the question box, and all of that. But would love to have you just drop a note in the chat if you would be so kind, and then we'll be back in just a few minutes. Let you behind the scene here, Dan. Let me know if you're hearing any background noise. I'll just need to mute that source, but I think we're good.
Yeah, yeah, we're good.
Oh, and Gabby on my team, if you could go in and enable the chat, or if you need to swing in here, let me know. Just want to make sure it's enabled here. So. We're demonstrating the power of team. So big shout out to Gabby on the marketing team here at Arreva. We'll have you enabled in just a moment, folks. We have what I would best describe as droves of people joining at every moment here. So as we sort of lead up, for those of you who have heard this already, I apologize for being repetitive, but I'm going to just put us on a pause here for just a moment. I need to just turn my camera or not turn my camera off, but just go into the chat section settings here. So one moment. Okay, I see a chat come in. Thank you, Jennifer, who responded. So I appreciate that. Anyone else, if you are on right now, I want to welcome you. We're just a couple of seconds behind here because we had to get chat enabled. So I'm going to take advantage of that time right now. Hey, give me a thumbs up, Dan, if you can hear me too. So perfect. If you could just, you are here for pushing beyond the donation envelope for sustainable faith-based fundraising success in today's world. Let us know where you're joining us from, both in terms of your geography as well as your organization. And, what type of faith-based organization are you? So you can just kind of flex those chat muscles. But I'm going to be doing a hard start so that because today's session will be recorded, and that way we'll have a clean recording for you afterwards. So we'll officially start in a moment. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is David Jost. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with Arreva. I will be the moderator as well as the co-host for today's session, but we have a very special guest we're going to be introducing you in just a moment. So with that, I am going to go ahead and begin the session. Dan, can you give me a thumbs up that you've got the visual of the deck? If you folks are seeing the deck, that would be great. And then great. I will just go ahead and start and welcome you to today's session. Welcome to Pushing Beyond the Donation Envelope for Sustainable Faith-Based Fundraising Success in Today's World. This is an Arreva panel conversation webinar, and we are so happy to have you join us today. A couple of quick notes to everyone. Today's session will be recorded and available on demand. We will send that out to you. So go ahead and take notes if that's your thing. But if you want to just be participative, this is very interactive and join. Rest assured that you'll receive a copy of all of the slides in the deck, as well as everything we've talked about today afterwards. But please stay with us because you make this a success, and it is really going to be a responsive session. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here with just a quick overview of the agenda. I'm not going to read through this verbatim, but we are really going to be, I'm going to be providing some welcome and introductions here. We are going to hear from you. We'll talk more about that. And we're going to be really discussing faith-based fundraising in today's world, kind of the state of things, as well as ways that you can figuratively push beyond the donation envelope to really get to sustainable fundraising, as well as just a little bit of discussion about what that's about and why it's nothing to fear. We're going to be hearing from our special guest and how he and his organization have really faced all of these challenges to be able to push beyond the envelope. And then we're going to be talking about ways that you can too, I guess, to put it very simply, sharing some of the technologies as well as some of the strategies that are part of that, as well as a Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and move to introduce the other gentleman that you see here on your cameras. And his name is Dan Kearns. He is the executive director of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, Diocese of Richmond Council. And I want to do a little bit, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but Dan's bio is going to be really powerful for you to hear. He has expertise, not just in the faith-based space, but across the sector and in working with both large and small nonprofit organizations, from a one-person shop to a many persons or people shop. And he has experience in a lot of different areas of those sectors. So Dan has been the executive director for SVDP Richmond Council since July 2021. In fact, he was the first executive director for the organization in its history. He'll talk more about that. He's worked as the chief operating officer and chief financial officer for the United Way of Greater Richmond and Petersburg, as well as that same organization and role for United Way of Broward County and Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a number of years. Prior to that, he's worked for nonprofit organizations and a public accounting firm in Morristown, New Jersey. If you pick up an accent, I'm not sure if you're from there. I think you're from here, Dan. But I may have picked up a Jersey accent. But served as president of the board. So lots of experience with both sides of the table with boards. Board engagement is always a big thing, as well as just being involved with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul at St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church in Glen Ellen, Virginia. So I'm going to just turn it over to Dan. If you want to say hello, anything you want to share with everyone as you welcome them and lead us through this path to the promised land, if you will.
Sure. Thanks, David. Thanks to everyone with Arreva, to all our attendees today. I guess good afternoon and good morning, possibly from where you're signing in from. We look forward to our time together this afternoon, and I'll share a little bit of my experience later on with both being a board member and then transitioning into a executive director, and how we're going to try to move past just the collection basket and come up with some good ideas regarding our fundraising efforts moving forward. So thanks, David, and everybody there for making this possible.
Terrific. And I want to just thank everyone who's joined us. We have people joining us at every point, so I'll probably say this a couple of times. Today's session will be recorded, so just rest assured if you miss something, you'll be able to pick it up as we go forward. So I'm going to just go ahead and move us forward to the next step here, which is really about you. And that is, we want to hear from you. You are going to make this conversation today what it is. Dan and I have prepared really probably an incredible number of slides. You'll receive all of those afterwards. We'll be going through them, but we're going to work really hard not to walk through every point by point. This is conversational. It's responsive. The insights, the questions, the comments you share are going to help us really direct how we're going about this. But we're going to go ahead and get you started with some with your interactive muscles and doing a little bit of warm-ups, if you will. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a couple of polls here. And if you see me looking at my screen, I've got about a million different pieces here, but we're going to ask you to just go ahead and participate in a couple of polls that we pulled up here. So I just have to find them real quick here. And I've got them on a screen. The first one is about what is your faith-based organization currently doing in terms of fundraising to support your mission. So I am looking for this real quick here. It's on my screen. 1 second. Sorry about this. So that you know this is real, I do not have it there. And if someone on my team sees it, you can maybe just launch the poll right now, because for some reason it is not showing visibly. Let me just see. Maybe it's on another page. There we go. Thank you so much. So I appreciate the power of team. So what fundraising are you currently doing? The first one is something I just want you to respond to, because we're going to talk about that. There's this Barry Manilow song, "You Can't Smile Without You." Well, you can smile without the Amazon Smile program, and we're going to talk more about that. It fits into what we're talking about. But if you want to go ahead and let us know here that, are you seeing the poll first off, Dan, everyone? Let us know that you're seeing the poll. You just go ahead and answer this. It should be showing up right now. And I'm going to just have you answer the questions. There's a number of things here. If there's something that's not on here, you can check any boxes that apply, and you should be able to answer on there. And if you, I like to wait till everyone's answered. What are you doing? If there's something that is not showing, and you want to include that, just go ahead and put it in the chat. All right, and that would be terrific. And so, if on my team, if you're seeing this, and you can see since you launched the poll, how many people have answered. If we get above, 50%, 70%, just go ahead and share the results, and let's take a look at what we have. Great. So we're across the gamut. It's interesting. Great. I'm glad we're going to talk about this. 41% of you have used the Amazon Smile campaign, and we're going to talk about that. If you're not familiar and you missed all the news or the emails and the notes, that is going away. And in some ways, there's some good news around that as well. So we're going to talk about that. But donation envelopes and tithing campaigns, great. We're going to talk about that. And I don't know. We're just seeing lots of things here. If you want to put in the chat, by the way, did you, if you've got live, virtual, or hybrid auction events, really any fundraising events of sorts, did you do them during the pandemic? And are you continuing them? Anything about that, we'd love to talk about that as well. So that's terrific. If we could pull up the second poll as well right now. And that poll is, which of these challenges are you currently facing? And so we want to kind of understand, there's a lot of challenges you guys are doing. I hate to, maybe this will be the last little pun I throw out there, but you're doing God's work. All right. So we're talking about, some great responsibilities right now, lots of things you need to do. Are you experiencing that your giving levels are down or flat? Are you, it's the inflation and economic challenges are out there. Are you seeing higher operating costs? Are you seeing increased demand for services? What are some of the things that you're challenged with? And by the way, while you're doing that, or after you do that, drop in the chat box, if you will, what questions do you have? What would you like to hear about when it comes to faith-based fundraising? We have an agenda. We're going to map it to that as well. And again, to Gabby on my team, if you could just go ahead, once we've reached about 70% of the respondents here, because we really want to hear from you to shape this. We'll go ahead and let you see what kinds of challenges folks are facing. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. So thank you to everyone who's chiming in with what you'd like to hear about. We'll answer as many as we can. And certainly, some of these things that are showing up in the chat, what I often find is that the community as a whole responds back to them. So we're going to kind of take a look at that. So if you could, I guess at this point, I'll count down from 5. If everyone just, we've got it there, everyone responding. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing these are the challenges, right, Dan? I mean, are there things here that surprise you, or pretty much what you'd expect to see?
It's been our experience, certainly, David, of what these responses have been, and I think it's everything that you and I have spoken about. So yeah, no surprises.
Great. So we can go ahead and close that, and now I'm going to move forward to the next piece here, and I'm going to tell you, I think we hit just about everything. There are some things that showed up in pretty equal fashion, right? But I just look at this, Dan, challenges faced by many faith-based. We put together this list of trying to read your minds and did a pretty good job of it. I think there's some other things, but what stands out about the challenges, and just in general, what do you think is causing the most challenge for faith-based fundraising organizations?
David, I think what we have begun to see, certainly on the faith-based side, is the numbers of people identifying with individual churches, whatever denomination, certainly has dropped. And then just the everyday pressures that most nonprofits are witnessing right now. We see those higher operating costs. Granted, that'll fluctuate from time to time, but it's how do we engage our boards? How do we to get them to become fundraisers? We're not alone, right? It's not just, it should never be on just one person or 2 people in an organization. Fundraising is truly a team effort, and it really needs to be. And I think just from a really specific thing, maybe more frustrating than a challenge is that 5th bullet down, where it talks about multiple siloed solutions, right? Where we're talking about, depending on our size of our organization, we could be using multiple different, whether it's databases or how are we engaging people for events, and how do you tie all that information back so that we give the donor the best experience?
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of great things here, and oftentimes the thing is you're trying to do something different and you're having difficulty executing those best practice strategies and trying to figure out a way to do that. We're going to move forward to the next piece here as well, which is the state of faith-based fundraising. And by the way, keep those things coming. I'm going to kind of pull some of these out so we all know, but you're seeing in the chat a lot of great things. I would tell you in general, there are a number of things about the challenges you may be facing, may not be everyone's. Some of them are all the same, but there's ways that we're going to kind of address a lot of the things that we're seeing here. So please just continue to share. I would tell you the state of faith-based fundraising. I'm going to tee this up for you, Dan, from our conversation. But religion, this is a space that is really at the heart of cause and nonprofit fundraising. It consistently is remained America's single largest recipient of charitable giving when you talk about religion. And then if you look at the next 2, they're closely related. I'm sure there are a number of organizations here or people that maybe join from education that are faith-based. So that sort of overlaps with the next category of education and human services. But there's no doubt the impact of inflation right on top of the recent few years and other associated economic challenges is hitting nonprofits, particularly faith-based organizations, particularly hard. And I would tell you that in a recent survey of nonprofit leaders, 33% report higher operating costs. More than half report increased demand for services. It's kind of a perfect or imperfect storm, if you will. At the same time, the giving to at least many Christian nonprofits is at a low of all time since the Depression, really, since the Great Depression. Still lots of giving, but it fell by more than 6.6% over the past year. And even as charitable giving nationwide is rising. There's no one answer where this is exactly your experience, but there's certainly something afoot. So I don't know if you have any reaction to any of this in terms of the state, because once you're done, Dan, we're going to move forward to why you should be have a lot of faith related to the promise ahead. So,
yeah, David, just oftentimes we assume, especially on a faith-based side, is that, well, people know what we do, and because it's faith related, they're going to give to us. For so many years that was true. I think now is we can't assume people are understanding not only what our mission is, but what is truly our work, not just being able to reiterate our mission, but to be able to talk about our work and reach people, reach donors where they are. So I think that's something that we have to truly embrace as a faith-based fundraising operation.
Well, Daniel, thank you for that. You'll remember I asked you at some point while we were prepping for this, just like, so, I mean, this is disheartening, but also not unusual. I mean, there's places where everyone is facing that part of not hitting your goals, or maybe looking at saying, why are donors not giving? I mean, is there a magic bullet here? Is there something that's happening here? Or what would you say about that?
Yeah, and in those conversations, it's just kind of share with everybody here. There's no, if you came on today, and to me, any presentation you go to, if you for fundraising, if you think, oh, there's that silver bullet that there's that magical answer, there's not. The answer is, how do we do what we're already doing? How do we do it better? How do we potentially pick up some ideas from other places? But there's no brand new idea in fundraising. You're going to say, wow, that's it. That solves everything. It's not digital. It's not just human. It's a mix of both. And we have to embrace that. We have to execute better. And I wish there was a better answer, but we have to execute better, and just kind of embrace what our work is.
I think it's funny. I'm just sort of chuckling at the chat because the community is doing what they always do, and particularly in faith-based, everyone's stepping in to answer some of these questions. We're going to get to them. Keep putting them in there. I would tell you this, out of this, why don't donors give, is we did, one of the biggest parts of our conversation is that whether we realize in our own lives, in almost every aspect, that the world has changed, that we emerged from the past couple of years with very different kind of, expectations and comfort with technology and any number of things, right? But things have changed dramatically. You want to just say, have you adapted? And what kinds of things can you do to go beyond? So I would just tell you this, I'm going to, on that particular point, we've emerged into a very different and forever changed world and fundraising landscape. And I have a couple of analogies, and Dan and I talked about this to share, but the pandemic really served as a catalyst for digital transformation that had already been going on for years and years. Many of us have always talked about our, congregation or our donors don't really feel comfortable with technology. Everyone had to get comfortable with technology. The fact that we're all on Zoom right now is testament to that. Anyone wanting to engage with their grandchildren needed to be very comfortable or more comfortable with a phone. So there's not just an elevated comfort level, there's also a bit of an aspect of expectation that has changed. So a lot of times people think about how many times on any aspect of your life you say, well, there must be a virtual version. There must be an online version to something because we just know that that's a given now. So it isn't like they go away. It's sort of an either or and kind of approach. So organizations that did provide virtual options, whether it was services or integrated digital and online, are faring better, but everyone has been able to take that quantum leap to get there if they need to. And at the same time, that being said, before any sort of flurry of objections come about, I would just tell you live is more alive than ever. And success depends on moving just beyond all of these different things across all ages and demographics. There's been a sea change. So, there is a large amount of, embracing of live. We're seeing it. We do lots of auctions, events, lots of things out there. People are more grateful to be out and about and engaging in what I call humaning than ever. And they're rewarding those who do it right with really great results and a pretty generous level of giving. So with that, I'm just going to point into, if you have anything to add to that, Dan, I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
David, I think a real life example talking about the use of technology when it comes to fundraising. Oftentimes the pandemic showed us, I think we were very responsive. I mean, it wasn't like we were all sitting around, planning for the next pandemic. I guess there's some people that do that, but for the most part, most of us don't, or the next disaster. What it showed us, right, is what technology can help us with. So I'll use a quick example. Our parish, our Catholic church, they had 70% of their people long before the pandemic were giving online. They had pushed it. They had educated people why it was important. So when the pandemic hit and churches were closed for a while, and even when they came back, numbers were less, they didn't suffer because they had kind of already embraced that idea of online digital giving rather than depending on someone physically being in the church and giving the envelope. Whereas I can only speak to a Catholic church point of view. at least in this area, they were about 30 to 40% online. Our parish, well before the pandemic, was closer to 70% actually online giving. So keep that in mind, obviously, in trying to be not as reactive in using technology, but in using it as part of your fundraising plan moving forward.
Well, I appreciate that, Dan. I think it really underscores, like, we're looking at this this notion here, because there's always fear when you're doing something different, or apprehension, let's call it. But so it's sort of you're stepping into the darkness. I love this quote to the right. I was trying to say it with you, Dan, earlier, and I keep butchering part of it, right? So I wrote it down so we all can see it. But I love this, and appropriately enough, it's talking about the notion of faith. So when you get to the end of all the light, and it's time to step into the unknown, or into the darkness of the unknown, faith is knowing that one of two things shall happen. You will be given something solid to stand on, or you will be taught how to fly. And I would say the something solid to stand on is, it's not about giving up what you've done, what got you here, but it's what's going to get you to that next level, and how do you learn to fly. So, it's about embracing the ampersand, if you will. It's about and, not necessarily instead of. So, there's a number of things here in terms of how do you faithfully push beyond that donation envelope. I'm going to let Dan walk us through some. Again, we're not going to read them verbatim, but there are some things here that I'd love to have you speak to, Dan.
And again, let's be clear. This is mixing the in-person human with the help that technology can bring us. It is not a one or the other, as David just said. It is that idea of and. How do we do both? You can't have, for instance, a 365 view of your data and donors if you don't know your donors, if you're not out there meeting your donors. However, if you're not tracking that information somewhere, then if the only place you're keeping it is in your head, that's a very dangerous place to maintain it, right? So we want to make sure that we are doing both sides of this. Just a couple of other things just to really briefly touch on that idea of diversifying your revenue streams, right? David brought up before the idea of Amazon Smile. I would think there's probably not a lot of us who solely dependent on Amazon Smile, but you very well may have been a decent revenue stream for you. Now that's just with a month in advance notice is pulled out. February 20th, it's done. You're still going to get a funding from them, I believe, for the last quarter. But these are all things. And if it wasn't that, what happens if you're very dependent on your church, your place of worship, and you get different leadership and they want to go in a different direction? So these are all things that what we're going to try and talk about today is how do we insulate ourselves or de-risk ourselves from depending on one sole funding source. That's the idea of how do we diversify our revenue streams.
Yeah, which really just brings us to that notion of sustainable faith-based fundraising, or sustainable fundraising. It's about reducing vulnerability and risk and diversifying your revenue streams, but it's also about sustainable comes from you really having, a good sound strategy, planning, and execution around what I would sort of refer to as a streamlined or an all-in-one approach. I mean, one of the things I would point out about the Amazon Smile program is that there's always something that may present some opportunity. A lot of times this isn't talked about, but that program, for what it contributed, and I don't think there's anything bad about any program that helps to contribute and help our causes, but you didn't have the data coming to you from those donations. You received the check, which no one's going to, turn away. It's great to have that. And that people are doing that. But, one of the great pieces about going beyond the donation envelope is finding ways to be able to bring all of that information, all of that data together about everything that you're doing, really into a unified database and into a real 360-degree view to be able to understand how to be able to activate that so that you're not starting from scratch. So I would tell you, sustainable faith-based fundraising is about a year-round approach. It's about multiple channels, right? It's about really trying to look at all these elements in the right mix and the right blend. And so I think that's important. But, Dan, is it going beyond or sustainable? Is it all about brand new, like the brilliant? You talked about the silver bullet, though, but, I love to talk about a little bit further about innovation and what that means.
Innovation, right, David, can come in a lot of different ways. It could be just taking something that's existing and doing it better, putting a little bit of twist on something. If I may, we had an example of a year. I would assume a lot of us do, whether it's year end or an annual appeal. We at our St. Vincent de Paul, we're trying to figure out, small organization here locally, how do we reach out to people at the end of the year? And we knew people were thinking about, possibly Christmas or any of the holidays. And we did something called, I'll talk about a little bit later, our Christmas lights campaign. It was just taking an annual campaign and just putting a different spin on it and trying to get people where they are to remind them, right? Because people are inundated at the end of the year with giving opportunities. How do you make yours different? And how do you trigger in somebody to say, hey, I got to go back to that St. Vincent de Paul or whatever your organization is and give to them because something triggered. And that's what we found is our Christmas lights campaign. It worked. It wasn't brand new. It was just taking an age-old thing of our annual campaign year end and putting a different spin on it. So
I love that. And, there are so many questions right now about what people are referring to as monthly giving or recurring giving or all of these kinds of things. And we'll talk more about that. We're going to, I would tell you that, in a sense, innovation oftentimes is about doing it differently. I mean, I've heard it said that innovation is, there are no new ideas. I don't know if that's true, but, many new ideas or innovation comes from looking at something that's been done elsewhere and finding out how you can take that and bring it into a new environment. So into your organization, or from the for-profit into the nonprofit and finding ways to be able to make that better. And oftentimes innovation is about how to be able to really execute. So looking at the things you're doing and saying, how can we bring all these best practices together, right? So how can we do something so that we're not starting from scratch and we're creating recurring givers? I would tell you, someone put out there that, recurring giving is down. I don't know, across the industry, it's not. Across our world, it's not. People are setting up things automatically, but and then there's the notion, there's a whole conversation going on about giraffes and penguins in the chat if you haven't had a chance to take a look, but it doesn't always have to be like, hey, let's do something like Save a Penguin kind of campaign. I've seen really great recurring giving campaigns or monthly giving campaigns from organizations that have said, you know what, let's set up a campaign that is, $22 a month in 2022 or 20 in 2020. Or 23 and 23, finding ways just to sort of put something around it to message it. But the trick oftentimes encouraging people along that journey is to make it easy for people to be able to set up recurring giving so that you take advantage of that giving opportunity. And Dan's going to talk about it, where when someone's making a donation, you're prompting them immediately to be, so would you like to make this a recurring gift? It is important because recurring givers typically give 5 times or more as much as a one-time donor. Annually, simply because of the notion that it's easy. It's sort of what I would refer to as, the same reason you have so many streaming services and they're set up. They don't come back to you every month to see if you want to subscribe or if you want to use their service, right? They may have to after what Netflix is doing. That's my personal opinion, but it's the convenience. We're all accustomed to that and setting that up. So that's an important piece. But I'm going to, because we've started to delve into that, and there was a question or two about what is this Christmas lights campaign, because it's pretty interesting, but I'm going to actually turn to a little bit of a success story, actually a big part of a success story from what Dan's done with the SVDP of Richmond Council and how they've been able to overcome the challenges. And we're going to smoothly transition that into this being an ongoing process. It's not like you just do it and then it's done. It's about continuing to evolve that process. So Dan, I'm gonna let you take us into a little bit about your organization, your story, and we can then talk about how that's analogous to what folks are looking at.
Sure. Thanks, David. And again, thanks for everyone for being here. Yeah, great questions. I would love to get a penguin. And I know David referenced that before, but it's a really, really valid point as far as how do you get that, recurring donor. A couple of things, and then I'm going to jump into our story, on that, the idea of recurring donors. Oftentimes, and I'm not saying anyone on this call does that, but oftentimes it's easy to forget the recurring donor, right? Because it's not that new gift that came in that we get excited about. It's just kind of that gift that keeps coming, right? And at some point, do our donors say, wait a minute, I haven't heard from them. I haven't, because it's unfortunately it can be easy to forget, and that's something we shouldn't do. Someone talked about how do we move someone along, and if you guys have never seen it, there's a wonderful chart out, and it's called it's like a continuum of fundraising or continuum of engagement, and it's taking someone who made that one gift because maybe a friend is on the board or something, and they said, oh, you should give to this organization. How do you take that donor? How do you engage them and how do you move them from a one-time gift to maybe a regular annual gift to a recurring gift, all the way down the continuum until you get to truly full engagement, where you're talking about planned giving and giving beyond their years, to be honest, right? So how do we do that? And there are a couple ways, but we all know, right? Engagement. How do you engage your donors in really ways that they get to learn about your organization? Because I'm pretty sure there's not an organization on here that's not doing just phenomenal work. So how do we do that? But really briefly, just to share our story, Society of St. Vincent de Paul is one of the older faith-based organizations in the United States, starting in 1845. We're a worldwide organization. But we're very local. We're in, there's over 4,000, we call our chapters conferences across the United States. And our basic core mission is it's developing the faith life of our members, right, through service to those in need. It is a Catholic-based organization, but we certainly don't just serve Catholics. We serve anyone. So really, emergency financial needs. Not a hard story to tell, right? It's not. People get that, right? People have all struggled. They've all been there. So, but for us, it wasn't just saying, well, help people who are in need. Oh, there's so much more to it. And not only do we want to tell why we do this, we want to tell how and what we do. Oftentimes we share just the what we do. Well, we help this group of people, or we provide this service. But why do we do it? Right? What is the why of our organization, and can we share that? With St. Vincent de Paul, we started off as we were the only St. Vincent de Paul in a large part of the state of Virginia. We have now grown to, there'll be 9 different chapters in our part of Virginia, which is central, south, and west Virginia, and western part of the state of Virginia. How do we, we had to tell that message, and we had to get it out there. We got it out there by literally starting with our first gift. We started with $1,000. I am sure many of the organizations that are on here today are much larger than ours, but we are now probably raising about $750,000 to $1 million. But it started from that one simple gift. But we were just adamant. We were very clear in what our messaging was going out, and messaging across channels, right? We used, whether it was in church communications, whether it was in print media, social media, and understanding social media, who are we trying to reach? Like, who uses what types of social media, right? So it was that. It was a easy to use, what we think easy to use, easy to navigate website. You guys can all go check it out if you want, and you can share that with me, but I think it's an easy to use website. And we made it easy for people to understand what our story was. We told stories, but we also shared data, because data alone is appealing to someone's the mind. The mind is a harder give. If you appeal to the heart, that's an easier give. So we kind of melded those two things together. Those testimonials of people we've helped, with the data to support those testimonials. One without the other was a challenge. But for us, one of the things that we did very much from the beginning, I asked our board, what do you not like to do? And I can imagine what you would think what they would say. And it was, sure enough, I don't like to ask people for money. And a lot of people don't. But you have to then put it in the context of what's your mission. You're not asking for yourself, you're not asking for your organization, you're asking for the people you serve. Okay. And when we were able to transition our board from just a governance board to an actual fundraising board, that changed a lot. Okay. Because now we were training them on how to carry our mission, our messaging forward. And I, as one person, right, I was the original president of the board. So I was a volunteer before I became an employee. When I was that, I knew I couldn't do this myself, or 5 of us couldn't do it. We had to multiply this out. So how did we make sure that we were consistent in our messaging and telling our story? Again, what did I tell it? I said before, and this our example is very true. There is no silver bullet, but it's just doing the basic things and doing them relentlessly and consistently. What's our message? And are we responsive to people? Now, listen, we can raise money for a variety of different things. You obviously have to be doing really, really solid work. And on the other side of that, the work you're doing is you have to share it. You have to share it. You know, whether it's in, you know, newsletter format, whether it's in, again, online, social media, website, whether it's meeting with people, right? Because let's be honest, the Zoom and everything was fantastic during the pandemic. You know, I think a lot of us are there's certainly Zoom fatigue, right? We want to get back out and meeting with people, and to tell our story and to talk about what we've accomplished. Yeah.
And
So
I have
those,
one of the
go ahead,
questions that
David. Yep.
came up. Yeah,
Yep.
one of the questions that came up, I'll look at timely trying to
Yeah.
answer it, but what's your perception, what your thoughts? I have some, but on, are people open to in person, like having you visit them? And what would you say about that? I would just tell you that it underscores the importance of really knowing your donors and having good information, right? But what would you say about
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our experience has been, yeah, most people have, at least in this part of the country, have certainly been open to, which is Central Virginia, be going back out and certainly meeting with people, if not in their home, certainly in a public place or something. But so yeah, and listen, always better. But to your point, David, is know your donors. If they're not, okay, so what other ways are there around that? Right.
Yeah.
Again, whether it's Zoom or whether it's a phone call or whatever, but there's nothing like meeting in person and
Yeah.
looking at someone's eyes and getting their feelings and what they're really, what interests them, what grabs them.
And I would say also sometimes that's why it might make sense to invite folks to your organization if you're that, that way, or to some sort of forum. But also just, I think it's kind of common sense to just be sensible, right? So if you're going out and you're engaging, you're visiting with folks, always have the option to, to meet them where they're at, right? If they're wearing a mask or if they're immune compromised, have that handy and just adjust. It's not unlike what we've done. You kind of sense, you read the room, right? And you want to engage from that standpoint. But I think that's important. And then one last thing, I saw a lot of conversation. You were talking about volunteers, a lot of questions about that, about the board. I would tell you one of the things you're going to hear us repeat is that the importance of a holistic approach. Because a lot of times when you're looking at, I don't know if you want to share, how many different solutions do you have? Are you currently using for your events, for your volunteer registration, for raising dollars? And that includes Excel spreadsheets, right? But it's about looking at it holistically, because your volunteers are not just volunteers. It's like your volunteers are people, and people are donors, and people are volunteers, and people may be someone that's able to leverage their network to get it out there. So we want to look at ways, and I share this a lot, about how you can overcome the time and resource constraint, because we can give you lots of great advice today. We can't give you more time, but there's only so much time in a day. That's something that's there, but we can tell you that leveraging something called net time, which is no extra time, to say, I'm going to be able to find a way to engage with my volunteers, to be able to help get them to fundraise, et cetera. But I think that's an important concept. Wouldn't you agree? Dan, I know we've chatted about it.
I would. And one of the things, and I think on this current slide right here, talking about this, I was a one-person shop, right? And to be honest, I still am, as far as an employee or staff. A lot of us have none. A lot of your organization may be completely all volunteer. One of the hardest things to get through is people saying, is think of the title of today. How do we move beyond the donation play, the donation envelope? People think, well, our church should just support us. So church should just give us the money. And that's a very dangerous road to go down when that's what we're solely dependent on. Okay. As a one-person shop, I needed other tools. Yet it was hard for some people to understand, well, what did you need? And for me, I started with just a simple donor database. And it can be, I'm not here to pitch for any one organization, or, whatever tool it is you use, that's fine. But, we were using a donor database. We were using something to register people for events. We were using something separate to, get people, like say a constant contact tool for mass mailings. It was things all over the place, and we were going to miss something. And I'm telling you, I've seen that in an organization where I'm the only employee at with $750,000 across all our work. And I've seen it in the largest organization I worked in was $17.5 million. And same thing, right? You had all these different solutions, and what was happening is we were missing our donors, we were missing our volunteers, because information was crossing. and just find some consistency in your technology solutions, whatever it is, guys and ladies, just find that.
So when you moved from the challenges, like where did you begin? What was one of the first things you did as you're kind of moving towards the things that you continue to do, Dan?
I'm going to give you, it was definitely two things, right? It was, I touched a little before on that consistent marketing message on how do we tell our story? How do we get our board members, pardon the pun again, on board with that story, and how to talk about it. But then we also talked about what the importance of how do we integrate technology? How do we integrate fundraising into our work so that it wasn't just on, oh, an executive director, that's your job, you go raise money. No, how do we integrate everybody? And one of the questions that would come up is, well, cost. How much do things cost? And one of the common refrains in business, right, is we talk about what's the return on investment. I mean, if you were to, whether it's technology or something else, if you were to purchase something for let's take a step back. If you weren't to buy anything, if you were just to do the way you were doing things and you raised $50,000, that's great. Wouldn't it be better what happens if you bought something, it cost you $5,000, but you doubled your fundraising output? Of course, we'd all do that, right? We'd all sign up to do that. So it's the idea of this cost of inactivity, the COI, right? It's the cost of not doing anything, that you got to always keep in mind. And that's hard. It's hard sometimes to get through to a board. But I would just simply say, have your information all laid out and make a compelling case, that, the tools that are needed, whatever they may be for wherever your organization is right now.
That's terrific. I just dropped that for folks because it's such a great concept, thinking COI instead of ROI, the cost of inaction, right? The cost of staying, continuing to do what you're doing. And that's a pretty easy way to justify things. Maybe easier said than done, but a good place to start. David, so we kind of talked about here. Yeah, go ahead.
David, I'm sorry. One last thing, as you were just saying that, everyone, this is about our donors, right? This is all about how do we make the donor experience seamless and easy. And the odds are they're going to like your mission, but donors like a lot of missions, right? How do we make it easy for them to give? Are you making them go through 5 steps to make a gift? And somebody, when I was at United Way, said, I want the Amazon experience. And I'm like, well, that's great. But meaning it's boom, I hit something, I hit 2 buttons and I'm there, I'm done. And I can just move on and I purchase something. That's how easy they want the gift to be able to be made. So I know we're going to talk about that going forward with solutions, but just keep that in mind. This is always about our donor. How do we make their experience easier, better, more rewarding?
Yeah. I love this slide where you were talking about bringing it all together, because that, bringing it's funny, we're talking about Amazon in multiple ways today, right? But the Amazon experience, where that all began, that's customer obsessed, right? It's like knowing everything about your customers. So the way that you get to that Amazon experience is everything about your donors. You bring it all together in a unified way. So that's why this is a great place to be starting. You have to be able to do that in some way or another, to be able to get to where you're at, really figuring out what you're doing here. But, Dan, I love this analogy, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about, I actually shared on the left an announcement that, that went out along with other things, but I just sort of thought about how things have changed. It's going from this to what's next. And talk a little bit about that thrift store campaign.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about sources, for my friends that are on here potentially from St. Vincent de Paul in a lot of parts of the country are known for their thrift stores and their wonderful operations, and they provide funding sources. Oftentimes, the organization is eclipsed by the fact that people think it's a thrift store only. That was the idea of starting with this advertising of, no, it's not just a thrift store. It's really about the work, right? The thrift store is just another avenue, another channel, if you would. But how do we took it from that, now taking it over to what you see in the middle of the screen, to give someone an online experience, more of an opportunity as we look to raise money for our first thrift store, right? It's not only the messaging that you see there on the screen, but it's look how easy it would be to give, right? And what are you doing with that gift? So those are, just again, some of the tools you see, whether it's, and I think this is an important distinction here. You have a PC, you got a screen, you also got a phone. Again, there's not every one of us, right? Unfortunately, good and oftentimes really, really bad, having the phone in your hand, in your pocket, wherever. But if it's another channel to be able to help the people we're trying to serve, right? So are we reaching people? Do we make it easy if they want to give on their phone? So
Think of how much panic there is when you are not with your phone. Think of it like it's actually been cited, and I don't remember the exact stat, but like one of the greatest fears people have is forgetting their phone or losing their phone. It's, you know, you're tethered to it, right? So this is interesting, looking at that phone element too, and then to the right, what, managing that campaign, right? What would you do before? You would put it out there with a message. You wouldn't make it easy to give, right? Because someone's saying, great, send it. I mean, you can look at, say, send us an email, let us know, right? But if you can have them, Dan, we talked about this, that moment of impact, right? If you can, that giving moment, being able to capture that and make it easy for them to give right now, like you just said, with the phone or online or in multiple ways.
and David, we mentioned this idea of that Christmas lights, and I said I'd come back to it. The idea, the concept behind that was there's so many people, that were struggling to pay utility bills, not just pandemic related, but all through the year, people who are struggling. And the concept of our Christmas lights fund was to say, you're hanging Christmas lights. It's the warmth of the holidays, right? It's all about light. And there's people who can't even turn on their lights, let alone hang their Christmas lights. Consider making the gift of light this holiday season. If that strikes somebody as maybe, oh, that's nice, but then they're doing your Christmas tree or putting lights up for any of the holidays, and it comes back to them. And then do we make it easy for them to grab what you just said, right? Almost the impact, I don't say sale, but we'll call it that, pick up their phone, make that gift. That was the whole idea, and it worked. It worked very, very well for us in a small sample size in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I'm thinking, looking at this and then bringing it all together where you can capture all the information in a unified way, making it easy to give in multiple ways, right? So this is like, for everyone, the phone's not the exact way, right? Some people want to be able to look at that on a different device. And then there was examples previously where someone was talking about being able to give to different funds. People want to support your organization in very different ways. And Dan, kudos to you. I've seen with your donor-centric site, you have a lot of different things that people can explore, right? Something's going to strike a chord with different groups, different areas as well, right? So you need to sort of identify that and map that, but it begins by kind of knowing your donors, I wanted to kind of just move as you're looking at that to just this giving moment concept, right? What you're doing with your donation pages is great, looking at recurring matching tribute. Talk a little bit about that, as well as maybe sort of the opportunity to get more by covering the processing fee.
Yeah, and I know there's been, again, a lot of discussion on the recurring gifts. I have found that recurring gifts to go to a donor to say, well, our costs are going up, so could you give more? To certain donors that will resonate, but not to every donor. I think it's in times of need, economic slowdown, oftentimes the request for our services goes up. It very rarely goes down. And I think the donor wants to be reached there. I think that's where our donor, you reach to the heart more than the mind, and ask, hey, would you be willing to, you make the case to the donor of why to increase that recurring gift. Some people are big on, well, you won't miss that dollar. Well, number one, with all due respect to fundraisers, and now I am one, it's not your money. It's my money. So don't tell me what I missed or what I wouldn't miss. Tell me what it's going to do. Tell me how it's going to help your organization. I think we need to be clear with that. But on your donor pages, right, on your giving page, again, David mentioned, are we talking about, does your company match? There's so many people that work for companies now that companies are matching employee gifts. It's not the old model of companies giving to what the company thinks. Companies have flipped it to say, we want to give to what our employees are interested in. And I can give you stats, and I won't do it right now, from years of United Way, which is what our business was. So find out who your donors are, find out who your volunteers are, and can they get, we've had companies that match 3 to 1. A lot of them are 1 to 1, but it doubles your gift or triples the gift. Do you talk about your programs on your donor page, right? Do you one of the things that I think we mentioned before is this idea of matching, of covering fees. And if someone gives online, they understand there's a convenience to it. but simply ask, would you be interested in covering the fee? Most people, if they're going to give $100, they don't want you to get 97. They really like you to get 100. Right? That was the call. That was the idea. So most people will be willing to say, check the box and say, yeah, I'll give you, 103, whatever, to cover the processing charge for the ease of this. So if you don't ask, you don't get, right? We all know that. And I think that's just something and if they don't want to do it, they won't do it. It's for the most part, I've never found that it's going to offend somebody. You do it automatically, that's a little different. But you give someone the option. And the last thing is, do you give someone the opportunity to say, we want to make this gift in honor of? We had so many people at a prior place, David, that I were at a United Way and our organization, we didn't have that ability. It's like we were missing so much.
Yeah.
My mother used to work at St. Vincent de Paul or wherever, right? And I'd love to give in her honor. So stuff to think about.
Well, and here's why it's important. One, make it easy to give, right? Make it easy for people to give more. Don't, make the most of that giving moment when someone's there. You're sitting here saying, I'm going to give. I was moved by the story of the impact that I can make. You've communicated that well. I've got the option to give at very different levels. I've got the option to do a recurring gift, which, by the way, 5 times the amount typically from recurring givers. Tribute giving, another way that we had questions about how do you get someone to give more. I will give more when I'm giving in honor of my father who passed to a cause, whether it's to his church, to heart disease, those types of things. And then, by the way, matching giving. Typically, I would say, this is kind of a no-brainer, but it can double the donation, if you will. And if in this kind of case, not only does it allow you to identify that someone has an employer that does a matching gift, if you're using an integration within a system with something like a double the donation, it can help you get that fulfilled and really be able to capture that. Because how often do you find out that someone has a matching gift, but you need to chase that down? And then likely the last thing I would say, these are all ways to optimize the amount the yield from your donation moment, because covering the processing fee, or sometimes we refer to that as a raise assist, allowing someone to cover the processing fee, you will typically find that as many as 95% of donors will leave that box checked or check that box, depending on how you set it up, because they're going to say, well, of course, I'm giving to you. There's a moderate processing fee. You could set it whatever amount, and we want the maximum amount to go to your cause. So those are all really good strategies. And so I'm going to go ahead and, just move us forward to doing the same thing with pledge pages. But I would love to have you spend some time talking about the, team fundraising.
Yeah, sure. And whether it's right, we go think about GoFundMe pages, right? These things pop up, and the idea of those kind of things is that they kind of mushroom out, right? So the idea of team fundraising is to it's a little bit of a friendly competition, right? And you create teams of donors. It works wonderful around an event. St. Vincent de Paul is known for a walk called our Friends of the Poor Walk to raise funds. And you set up teams. You set up walk teams, and to look to raise funds using that. But again, it's that idea of just it's a nice competition, a very friendly competition. But if you're going to do that, you really do want to have some kind of technology behind it. So because people want to see what kind of progress are we making, right? Are we progressing as a group towards the goal? How's my team doing? Things like that. So these are all, again, remember, back to the beginning. It's not a silver bullet. It's things that have worked for a lot of organizations. How can you make it your own and just, potentially do it better? So it's great tool. And David, one thing, because I didn't want to miss it, it popped up, and it's just whoever, I think it said Alicia posted it, donate now button on your website. It's something so simple. There's nothing more frustrating. You want to make a gift, and I can't find where to make the gift on the website. So if you have a donate now or whatever button you have to let people give, good Lord, get it to the top of that front page. It's not insulting anybody.
Yeah. Well, Dan, by the way, so one of the things here too is like when you're setting out communications, it could be a donate button, it could be a donate link, it could be whatever, right? So someone can take that action. You're so accustomed to wanting to do that, and sometimes we neglect to put it there. So That's a great point. There's so much that you can do here, harnessing the power of teams and that natural competitive spirit. Just interested to know if you are someone that does a walk or run event, let us know, drop that note in there. I'd just love to know how many of you are doing that, because team fundraising is a great way to do that. We'll give you an opportunity. But by the way, it's not just for walks or runs. We have seen educational institutions, schools and school systems be able to really embrace team fundraising, to be able to get classrooms and different schools or different programs to be able to all compete to be able to raise money on your behalf. And the reason I mentioned that is, Dan, because you talked about the one-stop shop, right? No one's a one-stop shop, right? You're not alone. You have volunteers, you have board, you have, ways to be able to get lots more done from the power of many, because there's so many people behind your cause. But, absolutely. So I appreciate that from your example. And I'm going to just jump in here, Dan, because we're going to kind of run through some things. I want to make sure we get to questions, because we got a lot here, and we'll kind of ask them as we go through. But we have so many more best practice examples that Dan is doing, and how you can build sustainable fundraising success. So, I'm just going to put this up for a moment, because there are some commonalities. Dan and I worked on this, on just what are some of the things that you should be doing that are about sustainable, right? Tell your story with impact, build awareness, engage your donors with a donor-centric website, whether it's one that is created separately or what have you, but streamline your fundraising and donor relationship management, bring things together. Make it easy to engage and give more anytime, anywhere. Empower your board members, your supporters, your volunteers to create more awareness, and find ways to leverage their networks. I mean, there's a way to do that. And quite honestly, we've all been doing that for years. You talk about innovation, right? People doing like a candle campaign, right? In days of old, right? We're doing like, hey, we're selling candles. It's a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign. You went out to friends of friends and had them share it with everyone, right? So this is just making that have much more, be much more scalable. And then lastly, live and hybrid and virtual fundraising events. So we look at these things, and I'm going to have Dan speak to these in a general sense while I show some examples. But what are ways, what do we mean when we're saying tell your story with impact, build awareness, engage your donors with a donor-centric website?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Let's talk about website just for a minute, right? Besides the fact that it's easy to navigate, to me, build your website. What don't you like about websites? And you want to actually do just the opposite of that, right? I mean, don't build something that would frustrate you. Put yourself in donor shoes, and that's website now, right? It's the first link to your organization. Okay. It used to be print, no more, right? It's obviously website. People go to it. You don't even know they're going to it. Are you tracking how many people? Do you have the tools to track how many people are going to it? If you're doing any kind of mass communications, right? If you're reaching out, that's how you're trying to tell your story. Are you doing it on a regular basis? And most tools that you can use, again, whether it's Constant Contact or any of them, MailChimp, and whatever you use, do you actually look to see what it's telling you? People are dropping off, people are bouncing you, that stuff is important. And you don't have to, and if you're like, that's not me, I don't understand that, then here's something. Get someone who does. Get someone who maybe doesn't want to do the work you're doing, but would love to volunteer and help you with that. It's another way to engage somebody. Yeah.
Don't send people away from your site either. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times we'll send people to third-party sites, and I know when we're looking at these donation pages have been shown you, they all have your organization's URL, particularly with different audiences. There's some I don't want to be having this, I don't want to have identity theft. I'm not sure who this URL is. Where is it, right? But if someone's making a donation and then you send them off to PayPal or some other place, and now all of a sudden they made that donation, it's one and done. But why not have them be able to learn more about your organization? Other ways they can get involved. They made a donation, so that's important. It's coming to you straight from the Pope here, right? So this is a good example. We've got what I love about this, though. Actually, the reason this is up, this is Pontifical Mission Societies of Boston. Thank you for letting us share your example. But when you look at this, they have so many funds. I will tell you, without going live right now, every one of these buttons clicks to something that's important to somebody, to give to specific parishes, lots of ways to give, right? To be able to do that in different ways. There is no one size fits all in your customer experience. That Amazon experience that you're talking about it's customer centric. Make it donor centric, right? That's a key point. So there's a lot of ways to do faith-based fundraising. And then now we move to the notion of streamlining your fundraising and donor relationship management by integrating and automating your software platform, whatever that might be. What would you have to say about that? And this assortment of puzzle pieces, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, the puzzle pieces are a bowl of spaghetti, whatever you look at as far as your technology solutions, it's frustrating. It can be frustrating, right? For a number of years, it was me sitting literally keying in things that I got in through PayPal off a report or exporting it, putting it into a database. That takes time, and time's a very valuable resource. It's a resource that at the time you may be keying in or having someone key in, you could be used spending researching another donor. So just be cognizant of that. What are solutions that you can kind of link these things together rather than having them all as one-offs? Besides the fact you're going to lose information, which is the worst thing to do because we hurt the donor experience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, just real quickly, that when you're looking at this, don't think in that anything but a 360-degree view. So I use the example of, if there's a couple where one is the person who's always at the events, the one who loves to go to the gala or goes to the luncheon, right? And there's maybe that same person is making the donations, but maybe separately the other person in that relationship is actually making the donation. They've cut a $5,000 check that week, and the other person in their household is at the event. You don't have any awareness because you're doing this in silos, that your events aren't flowing into the same database as your donations and all of those kinds of things, so that when you're setting up seating assignments or you're setting up different things, you can't be strategic in what you're doing. You might not even know, because if you're doing it right, you're going to know their preferences, because maybe they never want to be called out in public. You're not going to make that faux pas, and you're going to make sure you do that. Or maybe, you're able to see that they have you have great information about them, because when they attend, they always like to sit here. You're going to give them preferential treatment or recognize them. And there's lots of ways to be able to do things right. When you have a great customer experience, it doesn't feel manipulative. It just feels right to you. It feels like when I show up, they have my table ready. When I'm here, they come by and they stop by and offer me the treat that I want, right? So that's an important thing. And so, yes, an all-in-one approach is important. And then making it easy for donors and supporters to engage and give more anytime, anywhere. You talked about that. Here's the piece with the phone, right? Is everything responsive? Is it on the phone? Impactful messaging, you talked about, branded online donation pages. We talked about events. So I want to pause there for a moment. Dan, you have, you talked about some of the things, and you can make an event out of anything, but how is it important to be able to really build things with your events using technology, or making people aware of things?
Yeah, I mean, right. First of all, as an organization, what's the reason for the event, right? Is it a purely fundraising? Is it educational? Is it both? I mean, which I'd be clear on which one it is and which one it isn't. And be clear about it. You know what I mean? Be clear what your cause is, what your reason is, why you're holding the event. And in communicating the event, again, basic stuff, everyone. But we've all gotten information that's like, it's not clear. Why would I want to go?
Make it easy too. Yeah, make it easy, right?
Yeah.
Make it easy for supporters, but also sponsors. So here's an example of two different pages, right? Don't have one source of communication. Talk to people about attending the event. Talk to people about sponsoring a table, sponsoring the event, what have you. Similarly for volunteers, make it easy for people to not just learn about the opportunity to volunteer, but to be able to register for volunteer opportunities specifically that match them, and then bring all that information in your database so that now who are the people that have particular skills or interests or passions for certain things that you need help with. I'm just going to say this again, phones isn't just about your solution, but I saw so many people talking about their events. How do you add more pieces, right? So Dan, when I look at I've mentioned this to you, when I look at your thrift store opening, and we looked at this a lot during the pandemic, thrift stores were not open, right? They were had very diminished ability to have people in place. We threw this out to so many people saying, put a banner saying, hey, we hope to see you back soon. In the meantime, text SVDP to 71760, right? And you can have them make a donation or just encourage with signage out there. I want to have you talk a little bit about this notion of board members, right? There's a mantra out there for board members, an expectation. If you haven't clearly set those, you need to. But it's oftentimes you'll hear board members should give, get, or to put it politely, if it's possible, get off the board, right?
Mhm.
So how do you do that? What are some ways that you can do that with peer-to-peer campaigns or making it easy?
You make it, David, you make it easy for your board members. It's one thing to tell them, hey, you got to give this amount, which I'll be, I am not a fan of.
Uh-huh.
Or, it's more of, hey, we need to engage. We need to engage, and how do we engage with you, your network? How do we reach out to people? And that's where, just technology makes it easier. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But be clear, right? Be clear with our board members what our expectations are up front. Just
Yeah.
very, very, very clear.
And and help them with the messaging, make it a consistent message. Don't rely on what they're going to do, so that what you're simply asking them to do
Yeah.
is to open it up to their personal and professional networks. You'll get much better results.
Mhm.
Would love to talk more about that. We've talked about team fundraising. I'm going to just stop here and say that live is more live than ever, but I don't think there will ever be a time where virtual, nor should there be, where virtual and digital aren't part of that. When you go to an event, you are seeing more and more of this, where someone just has a screen up and maybe people are engaging virtually as well. There are people who you were able to reach when we made the move to virtual that you never would have reached because of geography.
Mhm.
So like now all of a sudden you're not limited by the venue size, right? So Dan, if you're doing something, you have someone who used to support your SVDP in Richmond and they've moved to DC or they've moved to California, they still care about you and they might still want to be part of your cause. For educational institutions, looking at alums and different ways you can do that. But I would just say there is nothing like an auction and done right with a professional benefit auctioneer to
Mhm.
be able to really engage people, make it more
Mhm.
fun. And we are seeing, and I'm hearing this directly from our auction experts, that the people who are there are just so, I don't even know how to explain it. They're so grateful to be out, right, with human beings and saying this is so much fun. And they're getting excited about a professional benefit auctioneer, making it fun and really kind of getting that competitive spirit and harnessing it. So we can certainly talk more about that, but that's an important piece here. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but Dan, I know you do a Day of Hope dinner. You've done one in the past, and I think you've done auctions in the past as well, right? I
We
mean,
have, we have, and I couldn't reiterate that more. Just people, people had something taken away from them. We all did, and people are looking to get back out and to give them that opportunity and to support a mission that they most likely really love, or it gives you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about it that you can never convene over a screen. I mean, absolutely do it. The technology
yeah.
is great to help with options and stuff like that. But yeah, we had a Day of Hope lunch, and it's been very, very, very successful. Be creative in your events, right? And do
Yeah.
different things, not just the same old, same old.
Speaking of creativity, I mean, there's ways to use technology. Florida Panthers Foundation, great examples. They
Mhm.
got people doing raise the paddle, which we all know, but how do you bring it to life with technology, right? Doing things like selling items and being able to do all kinds of like 50-50 raffles, which are often part of faith, right? Faith-based organizations, raffles and what have you. Check your local restrictions and regulations. I always put that out there, but those are important things. And I'm just going to take this chance because I saw a question come in. How do you engage baby boomers who may have dollars but aren't tech savvy like younger folks? One, I'm just going to do my due diligence here and tell you, if they weren't tech savvy, they're at least much more tech savvy after the past couple of years than they've ever been. And I would just tell you, if they had to order food, if they had to engage with their school, if they wanted to engage with their grandchildren or their children, they needed to become much more comfortable. But that being said, not everyone wants to do that all the time, but find multiple ways to get to them. So if you're sending them an email, give them a link, let them go there on their desktop, let them find a way to do it. So we're looking here at this piece, and I'll let you kind of lead us into this, Dan, about what we mean here, because as you can see, we're with you for good from an Arreva standpoint. This isn't about a sales pitch, but I do think there's something to be said for the right partners, the right technology, Dan.
Yeah, and we went from a sole person want that $1,000 gift to what we're at now and continually growing to having the biggest walk in the country for St. Vincent de Paul last year to a variety of other things. People may not embrace technology like you think your donors may not, but we need to, so that we can reach our donors,
Yeah.
and to have that information in one easy accessible place. And I've worked with a bunch of technology companies, so I'll be clear, this is not a commercial for Arreva. I can only speak to my facts of what I've worked with in the past. Find your right partner. For me, it was Arreva. For you, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But find that person. It's not it shouldn't be ever be a pressure sell. It should always be find a person who supports you. Are they supporting you, or are they just selling you technology? My experience with this company has been no, they've been supportive of me, of our mission. And I think most likely a lot of their customers and clients would probably say the same thing. So big question is find your partner, and it's not just about technology. Partner is the key word here.
Yeah, it really is. And I would tell you, thank you, Dan, for the compliments. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. I'm putting up right now so that for those who have joined us, please stay with us if you can. We're going to be speeding this up and getting to some Q&A, and there's some great stuff we want to share. I'm going to, while we're doing this, just submit your questions. I'm just going to give you a quick, real fast version here. This is my auctioneer speaking style, so I'm going to speak very fast. But Arreva has been serving the nonprofit industry for more than 3 decades. We have thousands of satisfied clients. We have helped to raise lots of money. And one of the important points, whoever you're working with, all software is not created equal. Ours is built exclusively for the nonprofit industry from an understanding and having been involved in this space for 30 plus years. We work with national partners, including the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. We're a national partner. We work with the Jewish federations. We work with the Catholic dioceses. I always connect that word. I don't know how to say it. The diocese members out there across the country, and Ronald McDonald House Charities, and just about everything in between, right? We talked about that cloud you saw is ExceedFurther, the all-in-one solution. The great news about it, and for Dan, you can see, is that you're able to scale. It's an all-in-one solution, but you don't have to do everything at once. You can grow and add things and expand as you look at it. Similarly, everything's mobile responsive. We have MaestroAuction and Arreva company auction bidding, text-based solutions, as well as services. So there's lots of great things there. And I would tell you this, I would put it this way, Dan, what you just shared, I think is one of the things we are most proud of. We have the best client retention rate in the industry. And we like to say we are with our clients for good. It doesn't mean we're stalking you. We're not going to go away, but we are there to help you to get to the good that you do with training, with support, and with a lot of times people sign up for something and then you're gone. But we are there like we are today, and no one speaks better to it than our clients. This is the Pontifical Mission Societies of Boston, and I would just tell you right now, I'm going to ask if our team member could launch the poll just about, would you like a free faith-based fundraising, donor relationship management, and auctions consultation and demos? We move to the questions. You can answer yes, maybe, not at this time, but I'm just going to put that up there. If it hasn't come up yet, I'm just going to see if that does. There it is. So just go ahead and just mention, would you like that? And, just leave that up if you would, Gabby, while we're doing this. But we're going to move to the questions now here. And I'm just going to tell you that that consultation is just that. It's not a sales pitch. You want to get on and talk about something we talked about today, or you want to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a golf fundraiser. What could I do better? We will help you for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. I mean, we've been known to help you for more. So we're here to help you. We are with you for good. So Dan, as we move forward, I'm going to kind of just turn it to a few questions. I don't know if there's anything that you saw that you want to respond to as I kind of go through these.
No, tried to work some of them in as we were going. So
yeah,
no, go forward, David.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think one of the things here, that if you have other questions here, folks, leave them, go ahead and pose them. But, I would say most people have kind of asked about this, in many different ways. But I think if you were, if you were to look at, the notion I'm looking here for right now. So, in terms of giving people multiple ways to give, what would you say to that? What does that mean to you, Dan?
And David, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand the question. So as far as just giving people different channels to give, reasons to give, all of the above, is that what you're?
Yeah, my question would be yes to both. Okay. Right? So yeah, absolutely to both.
It's a simple. I think it's to answer to both of them is obviously, we keep saying it, make it easier for people to give. Don't make it a challenge. If someone doesn't want to give online, then make it easy to send a check. Tell them where to send a check to. And are you giving them a reason to give? Are you clearly explaining what it is? again, all about, we keep going back to donor centric, all about the donor. How do you
Right.
reach the donor where they are? Don't expect them to know all about us. You got to go to where they are.
Dan, I love that. And, let them see what the impact is and what it's going to go to. I think of, a lot of organizations, but just top of mind, because we saw it on one of the slides was, that the, Ronald McDonald House Charities, I think of Ronald McDonald House Charities here in South Florida has had campaigns that are about just like getting new thermostats for the guest rooms. If you're familiar with them, they give people a place to stay when a loved one is facing a health situation, or they did something that was just related to, participate in the, adopt a, or share a meal kind of program, right? So like what your donation of this amount could provide the meal for family that's staying with us, right? People love to see the impact, but I would tell you that you got to close the loop. Don't just share the impact when you're trying to get that ask, when you're doing the ask. Share it after the fact. When you thank people, make sure you're thanking them in the way they want to be thanked, and you're letting them know that, down the road, when you're recommunicating. Dan talked about the importance of continuing to communicate with your recurring givers. I've seen people do a really good job of being able to have a campaign where they pull all their recurring givers because they know them and they're part of their unified database. So they'll say, let's send something out and say, by the way, based on what you gave, during the last 6 months or during this year, you've given this amount. And because of that, you fed, X number of families, or you're able to provide, X amount to help us build this new facility, or whatever it happens to be. So that's kind of what we mean. I mean, everything is a holistic approach. I think there are a lot of questions I'm looking through here that we have answered. I know some people have had to jump. If anyone has another question you want to pop in here, there's been some great stuff here, but otherwise I'm going to kind of close us out here today, because I know we've taken up most of the time that we've allotted for this. I'm going to do some thank yous and just kind of then turn it over to Dan to close this out. But, I would tell you that I just saw someone here right now share something about a golf tournament. By the way, golf tournaments, I'm just going to tell you this, they're great, right? You want to do them because they're fun, they engage your donors, but you want to find the way to be able to boost revenue, right? It's about, the golf fundraisers are about fundraising as well. So find ways to be able to capture that and do that. We've got some great ideas about it. If you'd like to know, again, sign up for the fundraising demo or reach out to us after the fact. But I'm just going to kind of close out here by letting you know that I want to thank, first of all of you who joined us today. You took time out of your very busy schedules. You have a vibrant level of questions and kind of, participation and sort of crowdsourcing, right, of helping each other. And that's what the industry is all about. So thank you for that. I also want to send a very special thank you to Dan, a very valued client, but just a very good individual with experience, who I think is also what it's all about. You have shared so much with the community in terms of your advice, your insights, your experience. So thank you, Dan, for joining us. And thank you, for helping everyone in the ways that you have today. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan for your final thoughts, any thank yous you want to share, and to close us out today.
Yeah, thank you to David again. Just like to reiterate to all of you, I've been on the other side of this. I know taking a lot of time out of your day for this. Hopefully you grab something out of it. I would ask you, if you certainly want to reach out to have further conversation, I would love to. I'd love to learn from you. You can definitely jump on our website. You can, St. Vincent de Paul in Richmond. You can look it up, and you will find my contact information. Would love to continue the conversation. We learn from each other. I said this before, and I'll leave you with this. All our missions are fantastic. You are all doing God's work in one way or another. Continue the good fight. And we are making a difference. Keep doing it. And again, thanks to David and the Arreva team for pulling this together. And I just really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and stay healthy and keep the faith when it comes to fundraising and everything else that you do.